So this video was supposed to be about one song and the message it conveyed when it first got released, and how that message has changed over time. However, as I began doing research on the history of the band and the reason the song got released in the first place, it began to feel like almost an injustice to only speak about this song, since what I found turned out to be a long list of arguments and power struggles, and this song seemed to be the climax that nearly destroyed their legacy. So today we're going to talk about it.
I'm proud to announce one of my favorite bands, definitely my sister Valerie's favorite band, and the reason that a lot of the fellas here got laid in high school. Styx! Oh, mama, I'm in fear for my life from the long arm of the law.
The band was originally formed in 1962 when a then 15-year-old Dennis D. Young stumbled across 14-year-old twins John and Chuck Panazzo, and he just figured his accordion would fit right in. They began performing in 1964 with the name Tradewinds. However, in the late 60s, they changed their name to TW4 with the introduction of John Serlewski as their new guitarist. In the late 1970s, the band turned into 5 members with the addition of guitarist James Young, who added a rock edge to the band. And after 2 years of making music and performing in small venues, they landed a recording deal with Wooden Nickel Records, and they proceeded to release Lady. However, Lady was poorly received by their fans, who thought that a love song like that didn't really fit the narrative of rock bands back in the day. In 1974, when the band was beginning to lose traction, they landed a deal with the most popular radio station in America, Chicago's WSL, who were actually really big fans of Lady, so they committed to playing the song every day until it became a hit. Thanks to this deal, Lady ended up becoming a top 10 hit in 1975, leading A&M Records to sign the band within the same year. However, John Serlewski wasn't a fan of Dennis becoming such a prominent force within the band because they had very opposing views on which musical direction the band should be heading. So he quit. After quitting the band, he was replaced with guitarist Tommy Shaw, who introduced an element of showmanship to the band, which changed them from a band who would just stand around to a band that could actually put on a show. Tommy, together with Dennis and James Young, wrote their first album to go platinum, The Grand Illusion. In 1979, they released Babe, which ended up hitting #1 in the charts, which gave Dennis more confidence in his musical vision for the band, leading him to take creative control. At this point, however, Tommy Shaw and James Young were done with soft rock. However, Dennis disagreed, leading to a fracture within the band that ultimately got Dennis kicked from the band. This only lasted 8 weeks before Dennis was re-invited back into the band, where he proceeded to lead them into another themed album called Paradise Theater. Paradise Theater ended up being their first album to hit #1 in 1981. However, at this point, most members in the band were tired of making thematic albums and instead wanted to return to the rock and roll music that most of their fans knew them for. Dennis, however, had other plans, and he proceeded to lead the band to one of their most ambitious themed albums, with Kilroy Was Here in 1983. The main single, Mr. Roboto, ended up hitting #3 in the US Billboard's Top 100 in 1983. However, despite its Billboard success, Mr. Roboto only seemed to alienate a large portion of their already existing fan base. Even worse was Dennis's concept for the Kilroy tour. He wanted something more akin to a rock opera than a rock concert. He wanted the band members to put on outfits and act in front of small venues, even turning down a lucrative festival appearance in order to realize his vision. This over-the-top rock opera caused Tommy Shaw to quit the band, and several months later, in 1984, Styx disbanded. Dennis's vision had finally torn the band apart.
Dennis had this vision for an idea that none of the rest of us agreed with, and we battled about it for quite some time. We all finally gave in to him on this concept record of Kilroy Was Here, and he believed in it, but none of the rest of us really did. But we tried our best to make something out of what we had, and we changed management as a result of that. And it was a financial disaster. It alienated probably half our fan base.
Because of this, many Styx fans still view Kilroy Was Here very negatively, and people who weren't fans simply remember Mr. Roboto as that silly robot song from the 80s. But Mr. Roboto was never meant to be silly. It was a warning. A warning about the loss of individuality and the dehumanization through technology. At the time, it was a warning about the early stages of computer and the anxiety of automation with factory jobs being replaced by machines. But I would argue that with the rise of AI, things have gotten worse. A few years ago, AI was a joke. It was something you could easily point out. But every day it gets a little harder to do so. Every day AI makes its way into our daily lives. It's replacing jobs, it's replacing entertainment. Robots are no longer the ones trying to be humans. AI is. Mr. Roboto isn't about a cold, obvious machine anymore. It's about a friendly, invisible interface, a system we rely on without fully understanding. We're outsourcing thought. The question isn't whether AI will replace us, it's whether we're already replacing ourselves. Kilroy Was Here got very heavily criticized when it came out. It ultimately ended up being the reason the band fell apart. Thankfully, this didn't last forever since in 1990 the band went on a reunion tour. However, this time without John Panazzo, who at the time was struggling with alcohol addiction and felt too weak to perform. Unfortunately, he passed away in 1996 at the age of 48. In 1999, the band began experiencing a pop culture revitalization with their songs being used in movies, shows, and even commercials. So they decided to go on tour. However, this time Dennis was the one that wasn't feeling well since he was suffering with chronic fatigue syndrome, and the band had no other choice but to replace him with Lawrence Gowan. Dennis, feeling left out, ended up suing the band for the use of the name Styx, a lawsuit that he ended up losing. And the band continued to tour without him, even to this day. From interviews I've seen, most members are over a lot of that drama. Dennis has apologized for dragging the band through his musical vision, and the rest of them are just wanting to enjoy touring around as a band.
What they call, I guess, irreconcilable differences. And we still have songs that we co-wrote together, and those are our children, and we've managed to find a way to keep those things in play. But personality-wise, you know, at this stage in my life, I want to be happy. I want to be around people who love me and that have my best interests at heart and I don't have to fight with. And so there's just not enough years left that I would want to risk not having that again.
Amen, Brother Tommy.
This video was supposed to be about a song warning about the loss of individuality. However, what I found was a power struggle within a band for individuality. One person who had a musical vision and a group who simply wanted to play rock and roll. It definitely was not what I expected when I first dove in, but going through and learning about the history of this band was actually really fun. I genuinely enjoyed it. So if you guys have any other bands that you want me to deep dive, please leave them in the comment section. This is unfortunately the end of the video. I hope it wasn't too long. I try to wrap things up a little bit. But yeah, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time.